Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham Kodesh. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of 1 Samuel, the 18th chapter. As we ended off in the 17th chapter with David slaying Goliath and cutting off his head. Okay, and the Lord using David to bring a great victory for Israel that day. So 1 Samuel 18:1, and it came to pass, when he had made an end of speaking unto Saul, that the soul of Jonathan was knit with the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. So Jonathan, being Saul's son, um, upon after David was done speaking to Saul, they basically, became like best friends, right? Or even brothers. As it says, his soul was knit with the soul of David. And Saul took him that day and would let him go no more home to his father's house. So basically, Saul had David in his court. Then Jonathan and David made a covenant because he loved him as his own soul. So Jonathan really loved David, as, probably more than even his biological brothers. And Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that was upon him. And when you go into that robe, it's let me just pull it up here. So as it says here, a garment worn over a tunic by men of rank. All right. So he basically gave his stuff, right, that he was wearing to David. As it says, he stripped himself of the robe that was upon him and gave it to David, and his garments, even to his sword, and to his bow and to his girdle. That's how much he loved David. And David went out whithersoever Saul sent him, and behaved himself wisely. So he basically, you couldn't find fault with David. Everything he was asked to do, he did it well. And Saul set him over the men of war, and he was accepted in the sight of all the people, and also in the sight of Saul's servants. So he was loved of the people, the population, the populace, and also Saul's servants, and those that he was set over, the men of war. And it came to pass as they came, when David was returned from the slaughter of the Philistine, that the women came out of all cities of Israel, singing and dancing, to meet King Saul with tabrets, with joy, and with instruments of music. So it's kind of like the I know the Romans used to call it a well, I can't believe it's escaping me at this point. A triumph or something. I think that's what it was called. But it's basically like, when the men return from war, and then you have, everybody coming out to meet them, and the women are singing and so on. So that's basically what's going on here. And the women answered one another as they played, and said, Saul hath slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s. So when it says they answered one another, it's like, imagine you have maybe women on the left side, the left hand side, and a group of women on the right hand side. On the left, they'll start off and they'll say, "Oh, Saul has slain his thousands," and then the right would respond with, "And David has slain his 10,000s." And Saul was very wroth, meaning he was very angry, and the saying displeased him. And he said, They have ascribed unto David 10,000s, and to me they have ascribed but thousands. And what can he have more but the kingdom? So, Saul was jealous, right? And he was upset because here it is, he's the king of Israel, and they're talking about he slew his thousands. And yet David, this boy, or this young man that came here, is compared to Saul in his mind, he's a nobody, and you're talking about his tens of thousands, almost giving him more glory than Saul. And as he says, what can he have more but the kingdom? Meaning, at this point, next thing you know, they're going to make him king. And Saul eyed David from that day and forward. So he had a jealous eye towards David. And it came to pass on the morrow that the evil spirit from God came upon Saul, and he prophesied in the midst of the house. Now, when it says prophesied here, okay, it's important to note it doesn't mean that the evil spirit jumped on Saul and he started speaking prophecies concerning, Babylon's destruction and the deliverance of Israel that's coming. That's not the kind of prophesying that it's talking about. In fact, when you look into the word prophesied here, it's basically to be under the influence of a spirit, right? So to prophesy, you have it in the sense of to prophesy under influence of divine spirit. Then you have of false prophets under influence of divine spirit. So when you have the men of the Lord that prophesy, they speak, and the things that they speak are influenced by the spirit of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. But you can also have men that speak under influence of a spirit, but it may not be, the same kind of spirit that the Lord puts upon the prophets that prophesy things come, things to come or speak in the spirit of the Lord. So this was an evil spirit that came upon Saul. And when you read this in another translation, they use the term in the NLT, for example. Yeah, it says here, and the very next day, a tormenting spirit from God overwhelmed Saul, and he began to rave in his house like a madman. So probably, just pacing about, saying things, and then he'll, like he's talking to himself almost, right? And he'll say this, and he'll say that, and he'll get loud, then he'll get calm, then and when you look into the word rave, it says here to talk wildly and incoherently. So it's like you can't really, like almost like he's babbling. You can't really make out what he's saying, but he's just like, just going back and forth. And they obviously knew that that was the spirit that was on him. That's how they could tell it was an evil spirit. And as he did that, and David played with his hand as at other times, right? So it goes to show you that since the time, because remember in the past that this what the servants of Saul recommended David to Saul, right, to play the harp to calm Saul when that evil spirit came upon him. So as it says, and David played with his hand as at other times, and there was a javelin in Saul's hand, and Saul cast the javelin, for he said, I will smite David even to the wall with it. So he basically launched that javelin at David, trying to kill him. And David avoided out of the presence twice. So twice he evaded, and the javelin didn't kill him. And he basically, like, he left, he fled out of the presence of Saul. And Saul was afraid of David because the Lord Yahweh was with him and was departed from Saul. Therefore Saul removed him from him and made him his captain over 1,000. And he went out and came in before the people. Now it says Saul removed him from him. What it means is like, as where David was in the personal court of Saul, playing the harp and all of those, Saul basically now stationed him as a captain, right? So now David would be required to be more, not in the direct court or presence of Saul all the time, right? Because as a captain over 1,000, he had to lead the troops, into whatever it was, like raids or battles or so on. So as it says, he went out and came in before the people. So he would lead the warriors into battle. He would bring them back, and he would be often in the presence or in the sight of the people. So he started to become like the face, where people would often see him, you know, and that would build that rapport and that respect that the people had for David. And David behaved himself wisely in all his ways, and the Lord Yahweh was with him. Wherefore, when Saul saw that he behaved himself very wisely, he was afraid of him. So he couldn't, when he saw how David moved and operated, it made him even more fearful because he's like, I can't find a way around this guy, right? I can't find some fault or something I can use against him. It's like he just does everything right. But all Israel and Judah loved David because he went out and came in before them. And Saul said to David, Behold, my elder daughter Merab, her will I give thee to wife. Only be thou valiant for me, and fight the Lord's battles. For Saul said, Let not mine hand be upon him, but let the hand of the Philistines be upon him. So Saul tried to use his daughter as a trap for David. So by having David, constantly go out to war, chances are David would likely one of these days be slain in war. So that's why he says, Be thou valiant and fight the Lord's battle. So you go to war, you fight, and when you come back, I'll give you her to marry, hoping that David would die. And David said unto Saul, Who am I? And what is my life or my father's family in Israel that I should be son in law to the king? So, I'm not worthy of this. My family isn't like some rich, noble family. How can I become the son in law to the king? But it came to pass at the time when Merab, Saul's daughter, should have been given to David, that she was given unto Adriel, the Maholathite, to wife. So Saul probably ended up changing his mind and, say, you know what? She's going to marry this guy instead. And Michal, Saul's daughter, loved David, and they told Saul, and the thing pleased him. And Saul said, I will give him her, that she may be a snare to him. So he was happy when he heard that his daughter had taken a liking to David, but that's because he thought, okay, this would be another perfect opportunity to use her as a reason to have David killed. It says here, and that the hand of the Philistines may be against him. Wherefore Saul said to David, Thou shalt this day be my son-in-law in one of the twain. One of the twain meaning, um, basically, here's your second chance, to be my son-in-law. I'm going to give you my daughter, Michal. You can marry her. Now, the reason it says here that the hand of the Philistines may be against him was because, as we're about to read, Saul was going to give David a challenge that in his mind, he thought, oh, David definitely can't do this. And in his attempt to do it, he's going to die. So by him trying to, you know, meet the requirement of what it takes to marry my daughter, he'll end up dying in the process, going against the Philistines, and then everything is all sweet. And Saul commanded his servants, saying, Commune with David secretly, and say, Behold, the king hath delight in thee, and all his servants love thee. Now therefore be the king's son-in-law. So basically, talk amongst him, get into his ear, pick his brain and concerning marrying my daughter. So try to convince him to marry my daughter, or to agree to marry my daughter. And Saul's servant spake those words in the ears of David. And David said, Seemeth it to you a light thing to be the king's son-in-law, seeing that I am a poor man and lightly esteemed? So you think this is an easy thing? You just get up one day and just go marry the king's daughter? How am I even gonna? Do you know how expensive her dowry would be? I don't have that kind of money. And the servants of Saul told him, saying, On this manner spake David. So this is what David's response was. And Saul said, Thus shall ye say to David, The king desireth not any dowry. So that made Saul even happier, because he's like, oh yes, now this works even better for my plan, because I can just tell him, oh, well, if it's money you're worried about, don't worry. I don't want your money as a dowry. Instead, I want something else. It says, The king desireth not any dowry, but 100 foreskins of the Philistines, to be avenged of the king's enemies. So instead, just bring me 100 foreskins of the Philistines, so I can be avenged on them, and I'll count that as the dowry, and I'll give you my daughter. But Saul thought to make David fall by the hand of the Philistines, because he thought, oh yeah, most definitely in trying to do that, he ain't gonna make it. You know how many Philistines he has to kill to do that? And when his servants told David these words, it pleased David well to be the king's son-in-law, and the days were not expired. So David was like, oh, well, that's good news. I could definitely do that. And as it says, the days were not expired, meaning that the time period the duration that he had to accept his offer was still valid. Wherefore David arose and went, he and his men, and slew of the Philistines 200 men. And David brought their foreskins, and they gave them in full tale to the king, that he might be the king's son-in-law. And Saul gave him Michal, his daughter, to wife. And Saul saw and knew that the Lord Yahweh was with David, and that Michal, Saul's daughter, loved him. And Saul was yet the more afraid of David, and Saul became David's enemy continually. So now he was even more afraid, like, yo, this guy is just every bad thing I throw at him, it just goes his way. And so now Saul became, as it says, an enemy continually, meaning now he would constantly seek an occasion to try and eliminate David, because now David, in his mind, posed a threat to him. Then the princes of the Philistines went forth, and it came to pass after they went forth that David behaved himself more wisely than all the servants of Saul, so that his name was much set by. Okay, meaning that he was very, popular, he was very liked. And let's read this here. It says, every time the commanders of the Philistines attacked, David was more successful against them than all the rest of Saul's officers. So David's name became very famous. And it's like all the attempts Saul made on David's life were really almost like an occasion to just put David in a better light. And that brings us to the end of 1 Samuel, the 18th chapter. Lord willing, this was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Racha Kodash. Until next time, Shalom.